financial aid applications, grants, scholarship information, and stuff, and then she'd answer any individual questions at the end as well. But I'm glad they made the time to come out in the cold weather. At least it's not freezing in here. That's the perfect bonus. But we will also be recording this session as well. Then we'll post that if for some reason you missed information or want additional information, you can look back at that and then contact us with any questions. So thank you again for being here. Oh, yeah, right here on the stand.
Yeah, you can take it right off of there.
Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Apologies for my delay in getting here. I am Nancy Harvey from PHEA, which stands for the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. And I was invited to do a program all about the wonderful world of financial aid. And as we get started, I ask that you please silence your devices so to not interrupt our time together this evening. There we go. Hopefully you picked up materials on the way in. The one specifically that will be a great reference tool for you, and that covers in greater detail the information I'm sharing with you tonight is the booklet, the Student Aid Guide. So if you didn't pick that up, be sure that you do get that. And I'll be referring to some other pieces throughout the presentation as well. So here is my contact information. My email address is the best way to reach me. I cover 13 counties for PHEA, so I'm on the road pretty much every day. So if you need a phone call or a meeting, of course, that's something that can be arranged, and I'll share my information again at the end. Your guidance office always knows how to get in touch with their higher education access partner, and myself and my 12 other team members. All our information's on PHEA.org as well. So these are the topics that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. It's pretty much everything from A to Z about financial aid, and again, having that student aid guide and other materials will be great reference tools for you after the fact. So financial aid, a lot of people, they heard of it, they think they know what it is, but it's generally a question for most people who are not in the higher education financial aid space. And financial aid are funds to help students pay for their post-secondary education. And financial aid comes in 3 different types. There's gift aid, the best kind of money a student could get their hands on. And it comes in the form of grants and scholarships. And students want to get their hands on as much grant and scholarship money as they can because it's a gift to them. It's given to them. It never needs to be repaid. Aside from that, then there's self-help aid that comes in the form of a job on campus of the school the student decides to go to. They would get paid to help them with post-secondary expenses. And then last but not least, there are loans, and loans are available from the federal government as well as from private sources, and they are available to students as well as parents. And being that there are these 3 types of aid, where does the money come from? It comes from the federal government, the state of Pennsylvania. It comes from the post-secondary institutions themselves, and then scholarships, or as well as scholarships. So in order for students to get their hands on the various types of aid from the various sources, they need to apply for it. And the students need to do their research to see what forms that they need to complete for the various post-secondary institutions they're interested in attending. Each school on their websites, on their financial aid pages, will list the various financial aid documents they request the student to complete, and the school will have their priority filing deadline for financial aid at their particular institution. The first and foremost application that every student at every post-secondary school across the country should file is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And high school seniors, as well as students that are currently in school, should be completing their 26-27 FAFSA application. Aside from that, in order to be considered for the Pennsylvania State Grant, the student will need to apply for that after their FAFSA is filed. And then some schools may have the student file the CSS profile form, and that's available through the College Board. And students should only complete the CSS profile form if it's required by the school, because there is a cost associated with that as well. And then some schools may have the student file an institutional financial aid application form. And to what I said, students need to do their homework, visit the financial aid pages of the schools they're interested in attending, and look to see what forms they are asking the student to complete. And with each school having their own priority filing deadline, the student should focus on the earliest filing deadline, because once they submit the paperwork for one, it'll be submitted on time for everybody else. And with the deadlines, it's important for students not to miss deadlines for the admissions process, financial aid process, as well as the scholarships that are available. Because students that miss deadlines can miss out on an opportunity to go to a particular school, let alone get funds to go there. We see it happen all the time. If it's a really good reason, if something big happened to the family or something, that a deadline was missed, a student can appeal, but just, I didn't know, or I forgot, or nobody told me, or whatever, I didn't get around to it. Those are not good enough reasons at all for missing a deadline. So the 26-27 FAFSA is currently open. So it can be done at any point, moving forward. And applying for financial aid is an annual process as long as the student is in school. And come every October 1st, the next year's academic FAFSA opens up. So aside from myself and my team members doing programs like this for the schools that are in our coverage areas, we at FIA also administer Pennsylvania financial aid programs. The largest program that we administer is the PA State Grant that I've mentioned. And we utilize some FAFSA data in evaluating students for the PA State Grant program. But there's additional information that we need to collect, which I'll review with you. But being that we utilize some FAFSA data in the process, students going to traditional four-year schools need to have their FAFSA filed no later than May 1 of 2026. And for students going to business, trade, and technical schools, hospitals, schools of nursing, community colleges, and a handful of four-year schools in PA that have rolling admissions, the FAFSA needs to be filed by August 1st of 2026 in order to meet that first piece of criteria for the PA State Grant. If you remember what I just said a moment or two ago, schools have priority filing deadlines, and the deadlines are earlier than our FAFSA filing deadlines for the particular schools that I just reviewed. So in order for a student to complete their FAFSA, they need to create a studentaid.gov account. Studentaid.gov is the federal website that a student creates their account on. They file their FAFSA on, do loan information, anything for federal aid is on studentaid.gov. So a student needs to create an account in order to access everything. You have an orange information piece that was on the table that it looks like a big buck slip or a big bookmark. Yes, I'm sorry, I usually have one in hand. I forgot to pick it up. But that gives you the information and the steps to create a studentaid.gov account. It takes about 10 minutes, and it's based on the student's personal identifiable information. Legal name as it is on a social security card, social security number, date of birth, a personal email address. School and business email addresses should not be used, and a cell phone number. And once all that information is inputted, the student will choose a username and password for themselves to access anything on studentaid.gov. And students should keep that username and password in a good, secure spot because it's going to be used time and time and time again. Also, most high school seniors and typical age students that are in school will be determined as dependent students for the purposes of financial aid. And dependent students are required to have parent financials contributed to their FAFSA. So aside from a student needing a studentaid.gov account for themselves, parents need them as well. And because it's based on your personal identifiable information, each individual person, parent, needs to create their own account in order to access the various parts of the FAFSA and any federal loans. And as I said, it takes about 10 minutes to do, and generally it's immediate verification process that comes into play. So being that students, dependent students are required to invite their parents to contribute their information to their FAFSA, this is a screenshot of the information that the student will see when they're completing their section of the FAFSA about what the process is, and if students need some help in figuring out which parent or parents they need to invite. If you see on the bottom of the screenshot, it says, who counts as a parent on my FAFSA? That's a live link that takes the student to a questionnaire to help them identify which parent or parents they need to invite. And that live link is available on studentaid.gov that you could use tonight if you wanted to do that. So once the student reads through this information about inviting the parent contributor, they do it via email. And the student needs to have the email address for their parent the email address that the parent used when they created their studentaid.gov account. And it asks the student to put the email address in twice, once, and then to verify it, to make sure it's accurate, and then they send the invitation to the parent. Although it goes to a parent's email inbox, it's recommended that the parent does not accept the invitation in the email, because we have found it generally does not work. That once the student is done with their section of their FAFSA, once they've signed and submitted it, then the parent logs in on studentaid.gov with their account information, and in the account of the parent, the invitation will be sitting there, and accept it from there and complete your parent section. So let's talk about whose parents will be, what parents will need to complete their section of the FAFSA and who would not ever be a contributor. We're going to focus on the yes side. Yes, it will be the parents who are married and living together. They will be contributing their information to their child's FAFSA. If biological parents happen to be living underneath the same roof together, whether they've never been married, whether they're separated, or whether they're divorced and living underneath the same roof, both parents will be required to contribute their information to the student's FAFSA. In the next bullet, for those parents who are separated and divorced and living separately, it will ask the student which parent gave you the most financial support in the previous 12 months. And whether it's which parent it is, if it's clear that one parent gives more financial support than the other, then that is the parent that the student invites to contribute to their FAFSA. If that parent is remarried, the step-parent reports their information as well. If, when the student answers that question, it's like, the financial support is pretty much equal between both my parents, then the follow-up question is, well then, which parent has the greater income and the greater assets? Because that's the parent the student would then invite if the support is equal. And once again, if that parent's remarried, step-parent reports their information. When it comes to separation and divorce and who contributes, these are the guidelines. It has nothing to do with who claims the student on their taxes. It may not necessarily be the parent who has custody, and it may not be the parent who the student lives with the most. And last but not least, if the student is adopted, the adoptive parents report their financials on their student's FAFSA. What's as important as who contributes? Let's talk about who would never be a contributor to the student's FAFSA, the no side. It would never be foster parents. It would never be legal guardians by court order, and it would never be anyone else living inside or outside the student's home. Never grandparents, never brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, neighbors, friends. It's never anyone else. There we go. So in order for the FAFSA to determine if the student is dependent or independent, every student completing their section of the FAFSA will be presented with these statements here. And when the student reviews them, if any circumstances apply to the student, they mark it off, and then the student would be considered independent for the purposes of aid and would not be required to have parent financials included on their FAFSA. But for most high school seniors and typical age students, the majority of students will be determined as dependent students because generally none of these statements apply, but occasionally there does. When it comes to the PA State grant, we don't automatically accept the federal government's definition of independency. So students would need to contact FIA's customer service department to find out what steps they need to take regarding an independent status. So I mentioned that everything federal financial aid is hosted on the studentaid.gov site, and that's where the FAFSA is held as well. And we recommend that students complete their FAFSA online because it's more secure, it's quicker, it's easier. There's built-in skip logic that depending on how the answers to questions go, if the next set of questions don't apply, they aren't presented. If for some reason a student cannot file online, there is a PDF of the FAFSA on studentaid.gov that can be printed, filled out and then mailed in. We recommend these documents that you see here and are listed on pages 20 to 23 of your student aid guide. That's what those bold yellow numbers are on some of the slides. That references this information in your student aid guides that you have. But it's good to have the information on hand just in case it's needed. So studentaid.gov account information, email addresses. The 26/7 FAFSA is based on 2024 tax returns. Assets are reported. The values are reported as of the day of filing, and assets are anything from checking accounts, savings accounts, cash on hand, stocks, bonds, real estate, land, etc. And any child support is involved. It's reported for the most completed calendar year. And for 529 plans, if you have multiple children, only report the value of the 529 for whose FAFSA it is. Do not report it all. A tip throughout the entire FAFSA, every question has a help or information button. Use those buttons. If you don't know what they mean, what they're asking for, what you should include, what you not include, use the help buttons. They are very helpful, especially when it comes to the assets. Your tax return information for the student and parents are automatically going to be brought in because you're approving and consenting to that happening in the very beginning of your sections. But when it comes to assets, people over-report what their assets are because they include things that should not be included. And those help and information buttons tell you these are the assets you're to report, these are the assets that you should never report. And unless you realize you made an error on possibly over-reporting on assets, no one else is going to find that. It can be corrected with the schools, but use those help buttons. And I mentioned about the tax return information automatically being pulled in. That's because of the direct data exchange that was built in over the last 2-3 years because of the FAFSA simplification laws. And in the very beginning of each section of the FAFSA, students and parents, it's a long disclosure. Read it, take your time. You should know what you're agreeing to. Because you're logged in, because your identity has been verified, when you go through it, you're agreeing to using this tool and the information being shared with the schools you list on your FAFSA as well as with VIA, so you can be assessed for the various types of aid from the various sources. When you hit the box, it's like lightning, the information being pulled in. On the next screen, there's a bar that goes, and hopefully you'll get a response. Congratulations, the tool works. You had success. I cannot tell you how many times I get emails from people that I know were at my presentations and that said, it didn't ask for my tax return information. It didn't ask me for this. It didn't ask me for that. It's like, well, you should have read the disclosure. You were at my program. You should have heard what I said. It's done automatically. The information being pulled in is masked. You don't see it. Students don't see parents, parents don't see students. It's all behind the scenes. It will not work in a few cases. This tool will not work if the person filed a foreign or Puerto Rican tax return, if the person has been a victim of identity theft and it's flagged on their accounts, and it will not work for the parents if the marital status on the day of filing conflicts with the 2024 tax return filing. If those things are in conflict, it will not work, and the information will need to be put in manually online with having those documents on hand that I referred to. So a student can list up to 20 schools on their FAFSA. Each school that they list and then they apply to and get accepted to, will then create an offer, a financial aid offer for them in the springtime. Students, once their FAFSA is processed, they could go in and add and delete schools on an ongoing basis. If schools get listed that the student never applies to or applies to and gets accepted, nothing's going to happen with the information. The way a student gets a financial aid offer, which we'll talk about, is if they're listed on the FAFSA, they apply to that school and they got accepted. That's how it works. And if a student lists 10 and they only ever apply to 5, they will and get accepted to the 5, they'll get 5 offers. Those other schools won't matter. And the financial aid application process is completely separate process than applying for admissions. They should each be done as soon as possible, simultaneously, but a student should not hold up applying for financial aid just because they haven't applied yet or they applied and haven't heard yet. Get the financial aid paperwork done. So once the student completes their section, signs and submits, parents log in, accept the invitation, do their part, sign and submit, and then a congratulations, the FAFSA has been submitted page will come up. On that screenshot that you see there, it will tell the student what happens next. They'll tell you an email will be sent to the student once it's processed, and it takes on average 7 to 10 days for the FAFSA to be processed, and once it does, the student will get an email. The email will tell the student, log into your account, look over your FAFSA submission summary, because it'll recap the answers to questions. If there were any red flags found during processing, it will instruct the student on how to correct them with the schools they listed. It will let the student know their estimated federal Pell Grant eligibility, if any, and it will also let the student know what their Student Aid Index is, or SAI. And a Student Aid Index is an output number once their FAFSA has been processed and is used by the schools in working up financial aid offers. So, I said about students applying for PA grant, and they file their FAFSA. Now it's time to apply for the PA state grant. And a student can't do that until they submit their FAFSA and it gets processed, because we use some of the data from the student's FAFSA. So once we pull in a student's FAFSA, after it's processed, we'll ingest it into our system. We'll scrub it and create a shell of a record for the student. And once the student's record is ready to go, we will send an email to the student letting them know it's time to activate their PA state grant account. And once they activate their account, then sitting there for them will be the 2 forms that they need to fill out in order to complete the PA state grant application process. The 2 forms are a PA state grant form and a high school form. I will say for students to take their time when they're filling these forms out. To activate an account and do the 2 forms, it should take about 10 minutes tops. Take your time in reading. The instructions are clear. When students go too fast, they say, I can't do this. I need to upload this. I can't access that. That's because they're going too fast and not reading the instructions, because periodically through both forms, students need to save them as a draft in order to move forward with the next subset of information to happen. So hopefully I won't be getting any calls from any students that are here, but if need be, I'm always here to help. So there are some dependent students that may have unusual circumstances in their life. And a dependent student who, for one reason or another, as you see here, there's about 6 of them up there, and there are a few others, that if a student is unable to contact their parents because it'll cause them harm, or they're incarcerated, or the student's a refugee, or whatever the case might be, a student is able to mark off that they have an unusual circumstance on their FAFSA, and their FAFSA will be processed at that point. The schools and field will receive a status notice that this particular student with an unusual circumstance is provisionally independent. And each school by law is required to reach out to the student to find out more information about their unusual circumstance and to request supporting documentation for it. And each school will make their own decision based on the information and circumstances, whether they can make that dependent student independent for the purposes of financial aid. The student would need to contact FIA for the PA State Grant program about what steps they need to take in order, because of their provisionally independent status. And once a decision is made, whether they're stay dependent, or they can be changed to independent, that decision holds as long as they stay at the school that they are at. So there are families that may experience special circumstances, and special circumstances are when a family is financially impacted in a negative way, from income, a retirement, high medical bills, a death, and so on. So whether it be now or when the student is in school, no matter when, if a family has been negatively impacted financially from when you filed your taxes or something happened now, the student should reach out to the financial aid office and let them know what happened. They will ask for supporting documentation about the special circumstance. And then the financial aid will hopefully be able to reprocess the student's financial aid based on today's financial picture. We all say in this industry that families should not suffer in silence, that truly the best office you should become friends with on a campus is the financial aid office. So, as we move on, the student filed their FAFSA, it gets sent to the schools that the student lists on their FAFSA. As the student applies for admissions and has been accepted or have been already, then the financial aid offices get to work on creating the financial aid offers for the student. So each school has their own cost of attendance, and cost of attendance is made up of direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are the first two bullets that you see on the slide, and that's what the student's going to get billed for. And a student receives two bills, one for the fall semester and then one for the spring. But there are other costs associated with going to school that they're not going to get billed for. And it's the other three bullets that you see there: transportation, personal expenses, books, supplies, additional fees, materials. So the federal government allows the school to add their direct costs that the student will get billed for with those indirect costs to come up with a cost of attendance. And financial aid can potentially be awarded up to the total cost of attendance. And how the cost of attendance comes into play for the financial aid offers, we're going to focus on that bluish-greenish Post-it note on this slide. And COA, short for cost of attendance. We like our acronyms in our business. And so each school, the cost of attendance is a variable because every school has their own unique cost of attendance. But what is constant is the student aid index that they're going to subtract off their off their cost of attendance, because the student aid index belongs to me. And no matter what the cost is, the student aid index stays constant. So the school will look at their cost of attendance, subtract off the student aid index, or SAI, They'll also subtract off other financial aid, if any, and other financial aid, like our outside scholarships or merit scholarships or athletic scholarships that the school may offer or know of. If there's any, they'll subtract that off. And once they do the subtraction, if there's any balance left, that balance equals the financial need that the student is demonstrating at that particular school. And when a student demonstrates financial need, then the financial aid office's job is to look at the various types of aid from the various sources and offer as much financial aid to meet as much of that financial need as possible. So every school's financial aid offers are going to be different with different amounts and different programs because the costs are a variable and other financial aid could be a variable. Does that make sense to you, how it's calculated? Okay. And this information is on page 3 in your student aid guide. So when the financial aid offers come out, and the financial aid page will let you know when the school sends the student their offers, and if they're going to send an email, or the student's going to have to log into the school portal, or whether they're going to send it by mail. It varies across, it just varies from school to school to school. But it will have the various types of aid and the various amounts split into 2 equal disbursements. So money could be sent to the school for the fall bill, and some money is sent to the school for the spring. It will also list the students' rights and responsibilities for being financial aid recipients. And it will also list the academic requirements that the student needs to meet in order to keep the financial aid and or receive future aid for their particular school. So be sure to review that. And once the student decides where they are going to go to school, they need to let the school know what financial aid they are accepting and rejecting that was on their offer. Because that's the only way the school is going to know what to fully process for the student. So let's talk about the federal aid programs and the state aid programs that exist. And give me a minute while I take a drink of water. Okay. So I mentioned the federal Pell Grant because that is going to be on the student's FAFSA submission summary what their eligibility is, if any. So the federal Pell Grant is the largest grant program that exists in the country. And the maximum amount that you see there of the $7,395, that's the current max as it is today. It's just too early to tell what it's going to be for the 26-27 academic year at this point. Aside from the federal Pell Grant, some schools administer the next grant program. And it's a mouthful, as you can read. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Shall we have some fun and say it 3 times fast? And whoever can get through it, I'll give you a gold star. If you see in parentheses FSEOG, it's the initial, first letters of each of it. If a student's eligible for it, it will be listed on their financial aid offer as FSEOG money. It goes to the most neediest of students. And when I said some schools offer it, not all schools have pots of this federal grant money to give. And schools that have pots of this federal grant money to give, their pots are different. So for example, I applied with a student, I applied to 3 schools. There's FSEOG money on 2 awards, but not on the 3rd. Well, the one that I'm not getting any money for could be because they didn't have any money to give, or the money they had to give was already spent by the time I got my application in. The two that are giving me FSEOG money, the amounts are most likely going to be different because the schools have different pots of money to give, all right? So I've talked, you've heard me talk about the PA State Grant Program. That's the largest grant program for the state of Pennsylvania. The maximum amount of the $5,750 that you see there is what the current maximum is. And just like the federal grant program, it's just too early to tell what the max is going to be for 26, 27 at this point. And the maximum amount a student is eligible to receive depends on the type of school that the student is going to, whether it's a private school, a state-related school, a state school, or a community college. And if a student is state grant eligible, can they take their money with them out of state? All right, oh, that is much better. And I didn't have a microphone last night, and so my throat is suffering. I've been doing these programs since September, so I'm always grateful for a microphone. So as I was saying, if a student is state grant eligible, can they take their money with them? If you see reciprocal states, there are 6 states listed. And if a student goes to school in one of those 6 states, they can take up to $600 with them. Reason being is those 6 states whose students come to PA schools are allowed to bring a little bit of their state grant money with them here to PA. So we'll let some of our state grant money go with Pennsylvania students to those 6 states. If it's any other state, a student can unfortunately not take their money with them. Reason being is those states aren't interested in playing nice with us and won't let their money come here, so we won't allow our money to leave. Aside from the PA State Grant Program, we administer at least 13 special programs with more to come. Our legislators every year over the past several years have been busy instituting, creating new programs for us to enact on behalf of the state. All of them are listed in your student aid guide. This is one page. Oops, now wait a second. I think I was a little quick with the finger. There we go. So 2 pages of special programs listed in your student aid guide, but the most recent list and the most recent information for anything can always be found on our website, via.org. Highly recommend to students and parents to periodically look at our website and look at the special programs. They're grants, they're free money. They're called special programs because the student needs to meet the criteria in order to apply for them. There are applications for the majority of the special programs. As we implement new programs, maybe the last time you looked it wasn't there, maybe it's there now and the student's eligible to apply for it. Or did any of the criteria change for any existing special grant programs? And reread them because, maybe the student wasn't eligible the first go around, but maybe they are now because the criteria changed. The newest one we're currently implementing for the 25-6 academic year is the Grow PA Scholarship Grant Program. Our legislators wanted to help build the workforce in PA in high demand fields. There are over 450 areas of study that qualify for the Grow PA Scholarship Grant Program. It's not need-based, it's based on the area of study and working in PA after you graduate. The 26-27 application will come out sometime in the spring, and I'll talk to you about ways of staying in the know. And a pot of money will be allocated, and it's on a first come, first served basis on eligibility. So we want to get applications in ASAP if you're in one of those areas of study that are part of the list. Now it's going too fast. So, student loans. At a minimum, every student that files a FAFSA will be eligible for a low-cost federal direct student loan. There we go. As it says, the loans are in the student's name. They will be required to sign a master promissory note, which has a 10-year life to it. They will be responsible to repay it, which begins 6 months after they graduate or drop less than half time. And when repayment happens, there are multiple repayment options for students to take advantage of. This loan, as well as the other loans I'm going to share information with you about, they're all unsecured. There's no collateral involved with any of these loans. They're all unsecured and can be delayed until 6 months after the student graduates or drops less than half time, which is incredible. There is a big misconception that whatever financial aid doesn't meet, that the student can borrow everything from this federal direct student loan program. That is not true. As you can see here from this chart, a first-year student can borrow a maximum of $5,500. And the money, the loan money they would be awarded can be subsidized or unsubsidized. And what the difference between those two words mean is a subsidized federal direct student loan is where the government will lend the money to the student as well as pay the interest that grows on that loan on behalf of the student. An unsubsidized loan is where the government will lend the money to the student, but the interest that grows on it is the responsibility of the student to repay. And we recommend that the student and or the family make those interest payments on any unsubsidized loans to keep the overall cost of borrowing down. And as you can see, as the student progresses in school, the loan amounts increase as the student moves along. Aside from the federal direct student loan, the federal government has a loan option for a parent if they want to borrow money on behalf of their child. Parents who are here in your section of the FAFSA, it will tell you you are not required to pay a dime towards your child's education or borrow a dime for your child's education. The reason why you're contributing your financial information is because the federal government looks at it as a family responsibility, but it's the only way the student could be assessed for the various types of aid from the various sources that we reviewed. But if you want to borrow, you may want to look into the Federal PLUS Loan Program, and PLUS stands for Parental Loan for Undergraduate Students. This loan is in the parent's name and will forever be in the parent's name. There's no way of ever transferring it or refinancing it into the student's name. That's a big misconception that exists out there. The PLUS loan would need to be applied for annually, just like the student renews their FAFSA annually. It's a very easy loan to get. All the federal government does is a simple credit check. And as long as the parent doesn't have very adverse credit, the loan is going to get approved, irregardless of the parent's ability to repay it or not. But as you can see in bullet number 2, it's a little pricey right now. It's close to a 9% fixed interest rate, and there are origination fees that are charged at the 4.228%. And the origination fees that are charged are deducted from the loan amount that the parent applies for and gets approved for. And then the balance that is left is dispersed in 2 equal disbursements to the school for the help to pay the 2 bills. Once the second disbursement is made, the loan goes into repayment over 10 years within 60 days. When the repayment information is sent, it does give the parent the ability to delay repayment of principal and interest. And if a parent goes that route, we highly encourage the parent to make those interest payments to keep the overall cost of borrowing down. And if you see in the last bullet, if a parent does apply for the PLUS loan and gets denied, that entitles the student to an additional $4,000 unsubsidized federal direct student loan. And then we have a call out, which is new for 2026. Parents can borrow up to $20,000 per dependent student for an overall aggregate of a total of $65,000. That is different as to what it is today, where parents for the 25-26 academic year can borrow the difference between the cost of attendance minus financial aid. So be aware that that is changing for 26-27. So aside from those two federal loans, there are private loans available from banks and credit unions and savings, community savings banks, and even from the state of Pennsylvania. Private loans have been available for well over 30 years. It's a tool a lot of families use. Some lenders offer a student option with a creditworthy cosigner, and some lenders also offer a parent private loan. Lenders who offer private loans will do a much more stringent credit review because they're giving their own money and they want to make sure the borrowers can afford to pay it back. So they will do credit checks, they will look at FICO scores, they will do debt to income ratio tests, they will look at what level, what grade level the student is in school, and what out of the 4 repayment options that the borrower is given, what choice they make if the loan is approved as to what the interest rates are going to be. I'm not aware of any private lenders that charge origination fees, but I know there's some private lenders that charge some back-end fees. Every private lender's terms and conditions and rates and so on vary. So if you're going to go this route, be sure to do your homework and read the fine print. If you're going to go this route, we ask to keep the PA Forward private student loan in the mix. Pennsylvania, although private loans have been out for well over 30 years, Pennsylvania came out with a private loan about 6 years ago to help lower the cost of borrowing private loans for students. The interest rate spread you see here is what it is now. We invite you to visit FIA.org at the time of application to see what the rate spread is, along with other different types of benefits and stuff that go along with it. So the fourth source of aid are scholarships. Scholarships are that free money, that gift aid. You want to get your hands on as much of it as possible. It's available from the post-secondary institutions. Aside from academic and athletic scholarships that are given, they offer other scholarships. There are local and regional scholarships that the guidance office will notify students about. And then there are a plethora of national scholarships that are out there. A student, and we know students who pay their bill, their cost of attendance, solely through the use of scholarships. It can happen because if students put their time in and search and look and apply, they can be rewarded. We're near the end, but I think it's finally batteries are dead.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Did you bring your clicker? We can just switch it, or I can go with that one takes it never check everything. I can go finish another one. You can,
Oh, I can click on it.
no, I think if her laptop wanted to restart, let's see if it'll continue.
Of course, and we're in the home stretch.
Well, she talked about scholarships, she said the guidance department. I'm Dawn McHale, I'm part of the guidance department, Mrs. Williams is here as well. So the guidance department is just right across where all the food is, that's where you usually find me. But inside the guidance department, we have the scholarships. So all of our seniors are a part of the Guidance Google Classroom, and we have the Community Foundation scholarships posted, and we just have local community scholarships, and we have some national information there for them that can apply. So there's a bigger pool of students applying to those, but a lot of scholarships go unclaimed, but people don't apply to them. So we tell students to look at the description, if it meets the criteria, please apply. We have paper copies in the guidance department, as well as they're all posted online on on the Blue Ridge School District website in the guidance department. It's in the Google Classroom. We send them, they're on the newsletter. We send them through their email. Lots of ways the students are getting them. So please don't ever let your seniors say that they don't know the scholarships available, because I promise you, we tell them. It's just they may not always look or see. So as they come, we post them. Community Foundation opened up the 15th of November, and they're due March 15th. So March 15th is the deadline for the Community Foundation. Some of the other local ones have different deadlines, so pay attention to those. And then the national ones, they all have different deadlines, and we have some posted, authenticated ones that are not like scam or fraud. You should be careful. If anything ever asks you to pay for a scholarship, it's probably not a legit thing. Scholarships shouldn't cost you money. So now that you're back on track.
You offer to click.
Yes, I'm happy to help.
So, I could talk a whole hour about scholarships, but I'm not going to do that tonight. Students should start looking for scholarships as early as possible. Scholarships actually become available to students in their freshman year of high school. It's a big misconception that they're for only high school seniors. They're available to apply for through high school, through college, and even if the student goes to grad school. There are scholarships out there that they can apply for. Thank you. So students want to start as early as possible and look year over year over year to get their hands on as much free money as possible to help them pay. As your counselor said, it's free money. You shouldn't be paying to apply for these, and importance of deadlines, I can't stress that enough. How crucial it is to meet deadlines for this whole process of admissions, financial aid, and scholarships. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this page now. We put together a very small list. It's not the tip of the it's barely the tip of the iceberg as to various search engines and places to go and look for scholarships. We just wanted to give students help if they haven't started, or for those that have, additional places to go and look. And applying for scholarships, some are essays, some are fill in the blank, some are you go do it online and it opens up a slew of scholarships that apply to you. Some are do a video, some are create something. There's all kinds of ways of applying for scholarships. And I'm telling you, once you start looking, you'll see when you're in the grocery store, when you're at the fast food restaurant, when you go look, it's like, oh, I like to play the drums for fun. Are there any scholarships for drummers? Golf? It doesn't matter. Put your thinking caps on. There's generally scholarships out there for everything. Height, ethnicity, religious background. I could hop on my left foot for 2 minutes. You think of it, look for it. Family circumstances, dynamics, whatever, look it up. The purple thought button on the bottom, you'll see there, Stuck at Prom Scholarship Contest. This one is for high school seniors who go to prom, and it's sponsored by the Duct Tape Company. And if students create something to wear out of duct tape, they snap a picture of it when they go to prom, they send it in, and the student can be awarded money. Something simple can get a student $500. Something elaborate and detailed can get a student $10,000. But it's just, they are out there. A few weeks ago, and I'll talk to you about we're on every social media platform and we put information out every day. And there's a scholarship about a zombie apocalypse. And it asks students, okay, tell us how you would survive a zombie apocalypse. So there are all different kinds of scholarships for all different kinds of reasons. Don't pay to apply, watch for the scams. If someone's guaranteeing you money, no one can guarantee you a dime in all this in this whole process. If you're getting solicited, oh, we came across your name, we hear you're this kind of student or that, I would be leery of that as well. Use your resources you are, because you're all here tonight at this program. Studentaid.gov, FIA.org. We have student sections, parent sections, counselor sections. We all have customer service teams and so on. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to anybody. The financial aid offices, myself, FIA, your counselors, we're all here to help. I invite you to stay in the know and scan our QR code to sign up to receive communications from us. We do this for a living. We want to help people. We want to help students achieve their higher education dreams and do it in the most affordable way as possible. So we send communications as to what students should be doing, thinking about when we learn of stuff. It's just, I think it's once a month we would send an email out. And then to recap what students should have been doing and doing now is visiting those schools' websites when it comes to admissions and financial aid and what scholarships they have to offer, as well as a lot of post-secondary schools list outside scholarships that they have vetted and they have lists. I'm going to go counterclockwise. If you haven't gotten those studentaid.gov accounts created, get that done as soon as possible. We just discussed about every year exploring scholarships as a source of financial aid. In the yellow gold, about if you haven't as a family had conversations about affordability, now's the perfect time to start. It can be hard to have those conversations, but we have found the sooner the families have the affordability conversations, the better it is in the long run. And generally, once that conversation gets started, it's an ongoing conversation that happens. If a student wants to get a general idea of how much federal aid they may be eligible for, as you see in the red box on studentaid.gov, there is an early federal aid estimator that the student can use. And then last but not least, in the purple, we recommend students utilizing the net price calculator. Does anybody know what a net price calculator is? No. Every school across the country is required to have one on their website by law. And a student answers the questions in the calculator of each of the schools they're interested in attending. And based on their answers and students that are on campus that are similar to them in their answers, it will let the student know what their estimated net price is. You should shop net price to net price to net price, because the net price amount you want to be as low as possible, because they come up with a net price when they look at their costs of attendance and subtract off all the gift aid, estimated gift aid of grants and scholarships, and whatever's left after they take off estimated gift aid is the net price. Because you want to shop net price to net price, because that's money you need to take out of pocket, you need to work for, or you need to borrow. So you want your net price to be as small as possible. That's why the net price is so important, and the federal government wanted to have transparency, so schools have these calculators so you can better compare apples to apples when deciding on going to school and where. So as I said, we are on all social media platforms. If you haven't liked us or linked up to us or whatever the case might be, follow us. highly recommend that you do, because then you stay in the know, what's going on, what's coming out, what new special programs, when applications are opening up, if there's delays in processing, and your counselors and I and anybody else in this field will tell you over the last 2 to 3 years, financial aid processing and dispersing has been massively delayed, and it continues because one year rolls into the next and stuff. So everything is not caught up yet. So last but not least, there's my information again, if you need to reach out to me, and the resources for our customer service teams. I do have business cards with me if anybody would like to have one. And I open up the floor to any general questions. I have one for you. Are your heads spinning? A lot of information to absorb. Okay, well, if there's a general question,
You
yes.
mentioned the Grow PA, was mentioned at a college one. How, just by the updates, will that let us know when that application is open?
Yes, that by getting updates, following us and liking us, those are various ways of knowing when the application would open up. Visiting our website, as I said, our website is always the most current. And it's such a popular program, the Grow PA, because it's the newest. It's being pushed out by so many sources that, no offense to anybody, but you would pretty much have to be living underneath a rock not to know when the Grow PA Scholarship Grant app opens. It's the first year. We opened up the app on March 6th. It closed in mid-September, and I'm like, on day one, we got tens of thousands of applications. Some are eligible, some aren't, but if you stay in the know and watch the things that I said, maybe you could be one of them. Any other general questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time. I wish you all good luck, and if anyone has any personal questions or circumstances they want to talk to me about, I'll hang for a few minutes before I get my piece of pizza out
Last
there,
left.
if it's not all gone.
No, there's one